All right, welcome, cool cats and kittens. Let's get started. This is the walkthrough video for your first lab. And it's not like a lab, so you're not using test equipment, but you are learning how to do scientific research. And so this is just an introduction into scientific research. I'm going to take you to our Canvas course. And from there, I'm going to show you. So I'm going to scroll down, and this is our first lab, Lab 1, Intro to Scientific Research. So I'm going to click this link over here. Basically, we're going to learn how to do works cited and parenthetical citations on peer-reviewed primary research. So one of the big issues that we have facing our world today is that a lot of people will cite articles and not like journals, like science journals. They'll quote journalistic articles, so ones that were written by journalists who have opinions and are pushing narratives. And so you get these anecdotal articles or unverified articles of information being shared in a viral way about unbelievable things that seem to defy rationality. Now, this lab isn't designed to take a position contrary to another. Basically, I find politics boring and misguided anyway. The purpose of this lab, though, is to familiarize you with the tools necessary to conduct the research on your own. So you can discover this and annotate this evidence, and then you can use this evidence to support or reject your preconceptions about reality. I want to show you how to sift through some of the heavy scientific jargon that you're going to get when you start researching science articles to get to the issues that you're interested in. And then finally, how do you present your meta findings in a cohesive way that's going to give credit to your sources that you draw your conclusions from. And so the best way to do this is just to dive right in. So first off, you have to think of what it is that you want to research. So sometimes it's really hard to find a good research question. There's a book that I really enjoyed reading when I was a graduate student. It was called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And basically, long story short, the author was at one point in time an English professor at Cornell University, and he had assigned the students an essay to write about anything on campus, right? And so the students were, most of them took off and started doing their research and stuff. And then one student came up to him and was like, "Hey, I am just overwhelmed by like all of the possibilities of what I can write about. I'm just so confused. I don't know where to even start." And so the protagonist takes this student and he brings him to one of the buildings on campus. That's this giant old building. And he said, "Do you see this brick right here?" And he points to the brick on the corner of the building. He said, "Yeah, I see that brick." And he said, "I want you to write your 5-page essay on this brick." And it was so focused that the student was like, "This is crazy." So the student went and did all this research. And he basically said that I had to take 20 pages of material and narrow it down to 5 just to get it to fit into the parameters of this essay that you assigned us. And so the idea here is that the more specific the question, the easier it is to zero in on supporting scientific articles. When you ask big, broad, sweeping general questions like, "Is eating carbs good for you?" Like that might be a little too general. And so what I've done is I've given you guys a couple of examples of topics of interest, research questions that might, if you're trying to think of something that you want to look up, these might help. So one of them could be climate change and what kind of weather can we expect in the future, diet and exercise, how they impact longevity or cognition, anti-aging medications, what are the most promising, how do they work? We have new gene editing technology that is just sweeping the world right now. And, how does it relate to potential designer babies? How does ethnicity and or gender affect performance or salaries in the workplace? There's plenty of studies on that. Psychological therapies for terminal cancer patients using psychedelics. Something that Michael Pollan investigated in his book, How to Change Your Mind, I just read that book. That's why it was on my mind. There are just a few topics that, these may not interest you. But chances are that just reading these, you probably got something in mind that you wouldn't mind finding more information about. So your first question that I'd like you to answer is right here. Number 1, what is your research question? What is it that you want to find more information about? And we're going to cover this later. This is like the last thing that you're going to do in this lab. But what is your research question? You know, it could be any of the 6 above, or it could be something brand new. So go ahead and write that down. You get 2 points for doing that. You can always pause this video if you need to do that. And then once you unpause the video and you're ready to move on, let's use the online journal library at Mesa Community College. And so follow this link to the online library at MCC. Now, I forgot to tell you guys that what you're going to need to do is make a copy of this lab. So you come up to File and go Make a Copy, and it'll say, hey, where do you want me to put this copy of this lab? You'll say, oh, you tell it what folder. I want you to go into, you know, honors project, whatever. This is my stuff, but you would tell it where to put it in your folder, and then you can access it from there and edit it from there. You can't edit it from my Google Drive, but you can edit it from your Google Drive if you make a copy. All right, so follow this link right here to the online library. So we'll click on that link, and that should pop up in a new tab. And then here we are. So Mesa Community College Library. And it says just scroll down. The lab says just scroll down to the MCC Libraries OneSearch. So that's right here. Okay. And it says type in psychedelic research on terminal cancer patients. So let's try that. Psychedelic research on terminal cancer patients. So we'll go ahead and search, hit the search bar. All right, so it's gonna, what the MCC library is gonna do, it's gonna go through all the journals and all the articles that it has access to. And then it's gonna pull up, you know, whatever comes closest to your search parameters. Now, what's cool about this is it will give you journal articles. It'll give you newspaper articles. You can choose to say, I don't want newspaper articles, or I do want them, right? You can uncheck that box. You can check that box. You can refine your search in a bunch of different ways. You know, I want to see the journal articles. I want it to be peer reviewed. So you can narrow your return to searches down by doing that. And then this says is one of the first articles that pops up in the search results is therapeutic use of classical psychedelics to treat cancer-related stress. Let's go ahead and click on this article. Now, if you can't find this article, just look it up based on its title. So let's see if we can find it. Therapeutic use. Therapeutic use. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm not seeing it. So let's see this. Let's go. Therapeutic uses of, and I want to make sure I get it right. Therapeutic use of classic psychedelics to treat cancer. So you know what? I'm just going to copy and paste this into that search bar. So copy it. And I'm just going to paste it up here. Boom. And I'll bet you I can find this article. Boom. There it is. Okay, so I found the article. It's by Ross. So I'm going to click on this article. And oh, look, it makes me sign in. So it probably makes you sign in too. Use your MEID and password, sign in. And then we should get access to the article. And here it is. All right, so we're on the article. We found it. It's on the left-hand side of the screen. You should see a PDF link to the article. Go ahead and click on it. It should open the article. Now, every scientific article has an abstract, which is a summary about what the article is about. So it'll give you a brief introduction to the topic, the area of research. It'll show you their hypothesis. It'll give you kind of a brief summary of their methods that they used. And then it'll even give you the conclusion of the study, which is a great way to just briefly read what the article is about. And so we're going to do that. We're just going to come over here and we're going to find, there it is, PDF full text. I'm going to click on that. Boop, boop, boop. And then here's the article. It should pull it up real quick. Boom. And here's the abstract. Cancer is highly prevalent. It's one of the leading causes of death and morbidity. Psychological and existential stress is common among cancer patients. And there's poor psychiatric and medical outcomes. And so promising early phase research from the 60s and 70s suggested that there might be some therapy if you're using this serotonergic psychedelics, that would be like psilocybin or LSD, in treating cancer-related psychiatric stress. And so after several decades of being in the Schedule I category, and not a whole lot of research being done to treat disorders. In the last 2 decades, it's sort of woken up in US and Europe, and we've started to revisit these drugs as means of therapy. And so this review article, so it's a review article, is based on a systematic search of clinical trials from 1960 to 2018, researching the therapeutic use of psychedelic treatment in patients with serious or terminal illnesses related or the related psychological illness that comes with that. And so they found the researchers found 10 eligible clinical trials, so 10 papers they used, and used a total of 445 participants. And so let's see, there were 6 open label trials between 1964 and 1980. So they had 341 people came from those trials that suggested, and they were looking mostly at LSD, that they may improve cancer-related depression, anxiety, or fear of death. And then they did 4, I'm not sure what RCT means, but it's a certain type of trial done more recently using psilocybin, and demonstrated that psychedelic-assisted treatment produced rapid, robust, and sustained improvement in cancer-related psychological and existential distress. So basically, by using these drugs in a clinical setting, they were able to ameliorate a lot of suffering of like the psychosis and mental illness suffering that comes from kind of end-of-life existential crises. And I thought that was incredibly fascinating, considering that these are labeled as a Schedule 1 narcotic, meaning they are highly addictive and have no medical benefits. So anyways, you can read the article if you want, but that's essentially the abstract. And so I read the abstract, and what I want you to do is then give me kind of a summary of what this article is about. Use 3 to 5 sentences. You can pause the video right now and maybe read the abstract one more time and just give me a summary. What did they do? All right, once you've unpaused it, now we can talk about how we're going to cite this source that we found. And so in biology, we're going to use APA format for our citations. You can find them pretty easily on the journal website where the article is. If you just look to the sidebars, you'll find it. And so I'm going to come back up to our article. And let's go back. And so there's a lot of ways that you can get citations. So you kind of have to poke around to see where you might find the citations. Let's see. We'll go back one. Oops. And like I said, you have to poke around a little bit sometimes. Cited references are the references the paper cites. I'm going to click on this link here so it brings me to this paper source. And then look over here where it says tools. Oh, it says cite. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So I come over here and I click cite. And what that should do is it should pull up citation formats for me. And so that's kind of nice. It gives me the references in, the Brazilian National Standards, the American Medical Association, and then here's APA, the American Psychological Association. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this right here. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm just going to paste it into our lab. Boom. That easy. So literally how you would quote, or that's how you would cite this work in your paper at the end in your works cited. And so just finding that and being able to copy and paste it there is worth 3 points. All right. Now that's just for if you want to use this reference in your works cited. But what about when you're making specific claims in your article itself? And so after you make any scientifically based claim, so if you say like, last year, 87% of people were likely to have some sort of depression, experience some sort of depression. Well, that's a very specific number. 87% experience depression. Like, where did you get that information from? You're making a scientifically based claim. So you need a claim, and you need to reference a source that you were drawing that information from. And so this is done with an in-text citation. Case in parentheses, the claim you're paraphrasing from the article. So for example, like if the claim that we were making in our paper, let's say we were doing a paper like an editorial, and we're writing to the editor of a journal, and we want to say like, hey, we want more people to do research with psychedelic drugs and, like chronic depression and, other major mental illnesses. And then you go on and you give them a bunch of references. You say, hey, I've seen that psychedelic drugs have been shown to alleviate end-of-life stress in cancer patients when done in a clinical setting. Well, if you put that into your paper that you're writing to them, you need to cite it. And so in your parenthetical citation, it would look like this. Psychedelic drugs have been shown to alleviate end-of-life stress in cancer patients when done in a clinical setting. And then you do a parentheses, the last name of the author, and then the year of that specific publication. And the reason you do that is in your works cited, you might actually have more than one publication by this author. And so if this author had, a publication in 2016, 2019, 2020, you have to specify which publication it is you're referencing in the year. So it's Ross, the last name of the author, and then followed by the date of publication. If there's more than one publication, the parenthetical citation should look like this. Ross and Jacobson. I'm just making that up. I didn't help him write it. Ross and Jacobson, 2018. If there's 3 authors, Ross, Jacobson, and McKenna, 2018. And if there's more than 3 authors, you would just list the first author's name with an et al. Afterwards. So it'd be like Ross et al. 2018. And that's it. And so this is done so that if your reader is reading your paper, like the editor of the journal is reading your editorial that you wrote, and he's like, hey, that sounds whack. I don't believe that claim you're making. Well, he'll look at your parenthetical citation, and that will direct him to the exact source in your works cited, and then he can quickly go do his own research without wasting too much time, which is really nice if you're if you're trying to fact check articles and stuff. Okay. So the article that we just investigated is actually a review article. So this is kind of interesting. What a review is, that means that the author himself didn't actually do any of the primary research. What he did was he looked at other people's publications that did do the primary research, and then he pooled their data together and did what's called a meta-analysis on them. So he was still doing research and it was still peer reviewed, but it wasn't primary research. He wasn't in the laboratory testing these things. He was just doing a meta-analysis on a bunch of different publications. And you might say, well, why would you do that? Like in what circumstance would that make sense? Well, with things like diet, exercise, lifestyle, and their associations, their loose associations with life expectancy and disease, you have to look at numerous primary research studies that many of which have conflicting outcomes and conflicting conclusions. And so if you pool all of the data together, all of the patients and all of their outcomes together, then you can do a statistical analysis on an even larger group and maybe make some more profound discoveries looking at an even bigger picture, so to speak. And so in order to find the primary research article from something like we just did, like this review paper, what you do is you just skim the article until you find a claim that links directly to a primary research paper. Then go down and find that research paper in the works cited section of that review. And we're going to do this. Once you've done that, take that primary research citation and then copy and paste it into Google Scholar. And I'll tell you why, and we'll do that all in a second. Okay. So first, let's go back to the article. And we're going to skim this article. Ooh. Right here. I'm going to pull this article back up, and then we're going to skim it until we can find until we find him citing one of these studies. Okay, so I'll show you guys how to skim these things right now. Okay, so introduction, he basically says, all right, we're going to review the literature. That basically means I'm going to do a collection of I'm going to look at a collection of studies. And we all know they affect the 5-HT2 alpha receptors, although they've been used by humans for thousands of years and known to science for a long time. They kind of went underground for a long time. And it said, with the data strongest for the treatment of alcoholism, followed by cancer-related psychological and existential distress. Oh, look, he's got one right there. So he's referencing a study that showed that you could use psychedelics to treat alcoholism, and then also followed by cancer-related and psychological and existential stress. And then he talks about in the past decade, there's been some clinical trials that have resumed looking at treating different disorders. he's talking about how he searched for, which articles and which clinical trials to include in his study. And here you go. So he said, our search identified 10 clinical trials, 6 open label trials published between 1964 and 1980. All but 2 of the clinical trials were conducted exclusively in patients with cancer-related psychiatric distress. Okay. Across the 11 trials, 6 explored the therapeutic use of LSD. And so these 6, he gives you 6 of the primary articles right here that you could end up going and looking at like right now. And so maybe we could do that. Let's pick one and go look it up, okay? So let's see. We're going to do Gasser et al. 2014. And what's cool is it's actually hyperlinked in the text. So if I click on Gasser et al. 2014, Gasser et al. 2014. So that's this one right here, okay? And so what I can do is I can do a couple of different things. I can take this, I'm going to copy it, okay? I'm going to copy the whole link. And I'm going to go search for it in Google Scholar. So this is going back here. It says, once you found that primary research citation, that's what we just did. We found it here. Associated with life-threatening diseases. Okay. Published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease. Couple things we could do. We can go look at this up in Google Scholar, and so let's do that right now. And then I'll show you that you can also search for it in our school's database. So let's go Google Scholar. Okay, and this is Google Scholar. So in Google Scholar has everything. The thing about Google Scholar is that you will most likely not be able to access the article itself, but you to access it here. And so like it looks like this one actually you can access the whole article, which is awesome. So you could actually read that article if you wanted. Some articles are protected by a, what do they call those, like a pay floor, so you have to like pay to read the article, but this one isn't, and that's actually nice, so we don't have to do that. Look, and then up here, if we want to cite this article, we can come over here and go down to APA format, and we can grab that citation if we want to do that for this article. But let's read the abstract. So a double-blind randomized active placebo-controlled pilot study. So they gave guys a placebo. I'm pretty sure it was easy to spot which one's got the placebo in the trial. So they had 12 patients. Treatment included drug-free psychotherapy sessions, supplemented by LSD-assisted psychotherapy sessions 2 to 3 weeks apart. They either received 200 micrograms, that's actually quite a bit. 8 of them received that, and 20 micrograms with an open label. I have no idea what that means about any of that. So some of it's jargon, right? And then, but we can kind of like skim it down to what happened, and we can say, okay, what happened here? The state anxiety was reduced. So, okay, so here's a p-value. So their anxiety was significantly reduced, meaning that the amount of reduction in their anxiety was so great that there was only a 2% chance that there was only a 2% chance that the reduction in stress was due to chance alone and not the therapy. So that means there's like a 98% chance that the change in their stress levels was due to the treatment itself. And so that's significant. That's pretty cool. And then look, it says that the reductions in their stress were sustained for 12 months. Wow. Okay. So one treatment having an efficacy of 12 months is like literally unheard of in psychotherapy. So these results, and so here's their conclusion in the abstract, indicate that when administered safely and in a methodologically rigorous, medically supervised psychotherapeutic setting, that LSD can reduce anxiety, suggesting that larger controlled studies are warranted. So they give a suggestion for future research, like we need to do bigger studies on this stuff, because it shows that as long as we're in a controlled setting with like a psychotherapist and it's supervised and it's medically supervised, it can actually have very positive effects for the patient itself. Okay, very interesting. So let's go back here. So primary article citation. So let's do that. Let's just go grab that one that we just pulled up. I said we can come up here and do the citation. And I'm going to grab the APA one, and I'm going to control copy it. And then I'm just going to paste it. Boom, right there. There you go. And this is how science is done. So You get some information from this one, and you just chase the citations around and find supporting research. But now it's your turn. So it's your turn to do your own research. And so go back to that first question in the lab that we asked about like your research question. That's the one up here at the top. Said, okay, come back to this one. And it says, what is research question? So now it's your turn to take that research question and run with it. I want you guys to find a peer-reviewed article about your topic and paste the citation here, peer-reviewed article citation. Now I want you to read the abstract to the article and post a summary of that abstract or a summary of the article down here below for another 5 points. And then this time, use a parenthetical citation at the end of your summary. So it's important. Now, this part I can't stress enough. It's incredibly important that you do not directly quote from the article itself. Using quotations is useful, but only when you're doing it in a journalistic English writing style. In science, we paraphrase. That way the reader knows we have digested the information, and what we're putting back out is our interpretation of it. And then we cite in parentheses where we got that information from, the article itself, so they can draw their own conclusions. When we just start quoting everything, it makes it look like we don't know what we're talking about and we don't understand the process. But when we paraphrase it, it's like, oh, no, this person has read the article, digested it, narrowed it down to where they can basically summarize it in a sentence or two, and then they've parenthetically cited it. So that's what I want you to do next. Is I want you to do a summary of the article. It can be a couple of sentences. Basically, what was the article on? What were they looking at? How to do it? What did they find? And what was their conclusion? And then at the end of that, I want you to put the in-text citations. So that would be the author's last name followed by the year of publication. And that is it. So you can take this and you can either come up here to once you're done with that, you can come up to File and go Download as a PDF. So download it as a PDF and then upload that PDF to Canvas, and boom, you've done it. And so this is just your way, this is your exposure to doing scientific research, looking up articles of interest or topics of interest for you. So I hope you found this walkthrough useful and helpful. I wish you the best of luck. I can't wait to see what kind of stuff you guys did research on. I can't wait to read the summaries too. I'm super interested. So I will catch you guys later.